We recently had a prospective client that wanted to engage us for some follow-up services on a project we had worked on. They weren't our initial client. We'd originally done the work for another client, and then this client was kind of taking over the project and wanted to hire us to help with some of that work. And when we initially discussed the scope of services that they were going to need, we kind of got that nailed down a little bit. One of the things we did was send over our standard agreement. So we have a standard contractor agreement that we use here at Redefined Horizons. It's basically the CLSA standard agreement in plain language form. So CLSA is our California Land Surveyors Association. So it's a good contract. It's a fair contract. So we sent that over to the client. And the project manager at the client said, "Hey, look, there's no way we'll ever get this through my legal department in not quick enough to get the survey done when we need it." He said, "Would you guys just sign our agreement? It would make things a lot easier." And I said, "Send over the agreement. We'll take a look at it. Send over the contract." So we do occasionally sign our clients' agreements. We don't do that a ton, normally because a lot of our clients don't have an agreement. But when we're working with a client that has a standard agreement they would like to use, usually an engineering company, we are always willing to review their agreement and to talk about signing it. So this client sent over their agreement. They were not a big engineering company, but they were kind of in the business of investing in large industrial facilities. So they send over their standard agreement, and there were some major problems with it. The main problem with it was that it was really made for people that provide construction services, construction work. So it was made for construction contractor, basically. So a plumber, or an electrician, or a framer, or a general contractor. And so they sent that contract over, and so we sent the contract back with a lot of red ink on it, and said, "Hey, this isn't really a contract for a professional service provider, professional consultant. It's a contract for a construction company." And they said, "There's a lot of problems with it. There's a lot of reasons why we can't sign that kind of contract. So, you guys either need to sign our standard agreement, or you need to make a lot of changes to this before it would be something that we could sign." And the project manager basically went radio silent on us. So there's a good chance we're going to not end up doing any work for that particular client. So the reason I told you that story is because it's what prompted the video, and I wanted to just explain to prospective clients, not just of ours, but of any land surveyor, why a good land surveyor isn't going to sign your contract that you use for construction workers, essentially. So before I tell you why a good surveyor won't do that, let me explain, why does this happen? Why do prospective clients ask land surveyors to sign contracts that are for construction workers? Right? It doesn't make sense. Well, there's some good reasons why this happens. Maybe good reason isn't. There's some logical explanations for why it happens. Okay, one is you frequently find surveyors on a construction site. A lot of surveying companies, that's the main type of work they do. They do construction surveying or construction layout. And so people see surveyors on construction sites and just assume that they are like the rest of the construction workers that are on a construction site, and they will sign a construction worker contract. So that's one reason why I think it happens. The other reason is, the second reason is, bad surveyors often act like contractors when they should be acting like professionals. I need to do a whole nother video that talks about how bad surveyors look like and act like contractors. But good surveyors don't do that. So as an example, if you've got a good, reputable professional surveyor, he's not going to compete for your work based on low bid. That's something that contractors do. It's not something that surveyors do, and there's good reasons for that. So that's the second reason I think people get confused, is sometimes bad surveyors act like they're contractors. The third reason is sometimes the client just doesn't know any better. They're just ignorant. That does happen. In this particular case, the contractor or the prospective client had their own legal department, I'm pretty sure these guys could have figured this out. But sometimes you have a client that just doesn't know any better. Maybe they're used to managing construction and they've never worked with a professional like an architect or a civil engineer. And so they just don't know what a professional services contract, professional consulting contract should look like. And then the fourth reason this happens is either the prospective client is lazy or they just don't care. It's like, you can sign this contract or you don't get the work. And that may be the situation that we ended up in with this prospective client. So when I'm in that situation, if I have to choose between signing a bad contract or not getting the work, not getting the contract, I will not sign. There's a lot of surveying companies that will sign bad contracts. We're not one of them. I haven't done it in the 2 years we've been in business, and I hope I don't ever have to do it. I don't think we will ever do it. So there's potentially some major financial loss for us if we don't sign a bad contract. This particular job was going to be, it was going to be $10,000 or $20,000, somewhere in that ballpark. So it was a fair amount of money. But we won't sign a bad contract. We won't sign your construction contract. So why is it? Why won't we do that? If there's a lot of money on the line for us potentially, why won't we just go ahead and sign the contract that you send us? Why won't we sign a bad contract or a construction contract? So I'm going to give you 4 reasons why we won't do that. And I think they're all valid reasons. I think they're important. So here's the number one reason. Number one reason is liability. Okay, I just can't promise you some of the things that a construction company can promise you in their contract. So for example, in the contract we were sent, in the story I told you, there's a bunch of language about providing a warranty on the constructed work and promising that the constructed work is going to be up to generally acceptable commercial standards, and there's a lot of language like that. That doesn't apply to us, right? I'm not building something. I'm not building any physical thing for you. What am I going to warranty? And furthermore, surveyors don't adhere to, this idea of whatever's a commercially acceptable product, because we don't produce physical products in that sense. So we have a different standard that we need to meet. It's called the standard of care, standard of professional care, that we need to meet, but it's a different standard. So one of the reasons that I can't sign your contract for construction workers is there's just language in there that is not applicable and that potentially could create extra liability for me. Land surveyors, because our work is complex and oftentimes difficult and uncertain, we don't provide warranties or guarantees. What most surveyors will do is tell you that they will perform to the standard of care. They will do a good job as a professional, but they're not going to promise you or warrant you or guarantee you results. It's like if you go in to see a surgeon, the surgeon is going to tell you that he's qualified to do the surgery. He's going to explain to you what the risks are, but he's not going to guarantee you a result, because surgeries just don't work that way. Surgeries are uncertain. There can be complications. There's always some unknowns. And so surveying is similar to that. So that's the first reason. I just won't do it for liability reasons. And no project you bring in the door here is worth losing my company ever. The second reason is insurance. So we have what we call professional liability insurance that protects us and you if we were to make a mistake for some reason in our work. And bottom line is, if you got bad language in your contract, it's not insurable, and that means neither one of us gets protected if something goes wrong. So we don't sign contracts with language that isn't insurable. Right? And so if you're treating me like I'm a construction company that's building something physical on your site, and I promise you I'm going to perform to that standard, the standard's not applicable to me. It's not covered by my insurance policy. If I dork something up, neither one of us are going to be covered by my insurance in that situation. That's bad for you and it's bad for me, so we don't do it. The third reason is I just think it sets unreasonable expectations. I've done some other videos. I did a video for CLSA about contract basics for surveyors, and basically a contract is to set out some expectations. Yeah, that's the most important role a contract can perform, right? Is I'm going to tell you, the client, what I'm going to do as a surveyor, and then you're going to tell me as the client what you're going to do as the client, right? So I'm going to agree to be careful in how I perform my work. You're going to agree to pay me on time, those kinds of things. So contracts are really important for just setting out the expectations that we're going to have of one another as part of this business relationship. And man, it's a really you don't want to start with a contract that just either A, has expectations that don't apply to me because of the type of service that I'm providing, or B, that there's no way I'm going to meet them. For the reasons we talked about earlier when I gave you the example of a surgeon. So I don't want to start our relationship off by giving you false expectations in writing because you got a bad contract. Man, I don't want to do that. Okay, and then the fourth reason, the last reason we just won't sign your construction contract is it's a horrible way to start a business relationship, right? So if you're the type of client that can't understand that I'm a professional consultant and not a construction company, and you're not willing to work with me to get a good agreement or contract in place, you're probably not a good client. We certainly aren't the type of client that we want to work with. If you're in too much of a hurry or just don't care, then you don't care enough about the surveying services that I'm going to provide you, and you need to go find somebody else to do your work. So the minute I sign a bad contract, or I sign your construction contract as a professional land surveyor, I've just set us up for a bad working relationship, period. And I'm not going to do that. I don't want to get in a situation where you as a client are unhappy and I as a consultant am not happy with the relationship that we have. I want to get us off on the right foot. That means we got to be willing to talk to each other. We got to be willing to understand each other. We got to be willing to answer each other's questions. We got to be flexible with one another to a certain extent or degree. And part of that, part of you demonstrating that you're going to be that kind of partner in our relationship is your willingness to have a conversation about your contract and the type of contract that I can sign.